It's a land mass the size of France. So you can just imagine that they have to fly all over the place. There's just few roads, and there's a number of communities in the south, but to get around, you have to go up to the territory's boundary just about.
Saskatchewan is known as the land of living skies for its vast plains and rural communities. But as you drive north towards the Northwest Territories, the landscape changes. Gone are the canola and flax fields, replaced by pine trees and the rolling landscape. The whole northern half of Saskatchewan forms just one riding, Desnethé-Missinippi-Churchill River. It's among the largest in the country. Not only is the land different in this part of the province, the demographics are also unique. With the riding boundary change in 2023, there are now just under 38,000 people that live here. 87% are Indigenous. That boundary change has shifted not only the population, but also the political dynamic here, as journalist Doug Cuthand explains.
Well, it's changed it quite considerably. The demographic has shifted. We have the Dene Nation in the north, the Woodland Cree in the south, and the Métis live all over the place, of course. When the boundaries are redrawn, they took out the town of Meadow Lake, which was one of the biggest communities in that constituency, and it had a large non-Indigenous population, and so the Conservative member of Parliament actually campaigned around he was a former mayor of Meadow Lake. He just campaigned around that area, and he was able to carry the constituency.
Desnethé-Missinippi-Churchill River was held by Conservative Gary Vidal for 2 terms. Vidal decided not to run again after the boundary change cut out his traditionally conservative community of Meadow Lake. Historically, the riding has been unpredictable, held by all 3 major parties at one time. This election, the Liberals hope to win the north of Saskatchewan with a well-known candidate.
He's a fighter for the north. He's a fighter for Saskatchewan. He's a fighter for Canada. The one and only, Buckley Belanger.
Thank you very much, Greg.
Buckley Belanger, who is Cree, represented the provincial riding of Athabasca for 25 years, first as a Liberal and then as a New Democrat, before trying and failing to be elected for the federal Liberals in 2021. But if the new boundaries put in place for this election had been used last time, Belanger would have won his seat. He is running again confidently. Local polls conducted mid-campaign show he's leading the other candidates.
So as families and as people from the north, we will stick together and we'll certainly support those that are going to work for us. And they've blessed me with that support to go forward to Ottawa as a Liberal. And the big thing that I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm able to advocate and navigate for northern Saskatchewan.
The Missinippi Broadcasting Corporation, or MBC, is well known throughout the riding and airs programs in English, Dene, and Cree.
Good afternoon. It's -6 degrees in La Ronge, +1 in Prince Albert and Saskatoon, and 5 in Regina. I'm David Smith, and this is MBC's The North at Noon.
Between sports, the weather, and local events, Smith announces a special guest to the town of La Ronge, home to just over 2,000 people.
Christa Phelan will be visiting in the northern riding of Desnethé-Missinippi-Churchill River on the campaign trail with Liberal candidate Buckley Belanger.
If the Liberals pick up this seat, it would be the first in Saskatchewan since Raph Goodale lost in Regina 6 years ago. The party has flown in University Rosedale candidate, ex-finance minister and current cabinet minister, Christa Freeland from Toronto. She's here to boost Buckley's campaign, take part in community activities in La Ronge, and listen to Indigenous leaders.
I was really delighted. One of the people at the roundtable Buckley organized, actually a former MP for this community, talked about the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program. I put that in place in my last budget as finance minister, $5 billion for Indigenous communities to take a stake in businesses in their communities, for Indigenous nations to take a stake in businesses where they live. Prime Minister Carney has said he will increase that, he will double that.
The Conservative candidate here is Jim Lemaigre. He's a former Mountie and ex-mental health and suicide prevention worker in northern Saskatchewan. He briefly held the provincial seat of Athabasca for the Saskatchewan Party, the first member of the right-leaning party to be elected in this northern riding provincially. Lemaigre, who is Desnethé, believes he can be a strong Indigenous voice in Ottawa.
When we're talking about truth and reconciliation and how we move forward with a lot of the communities, a lot of the First Nations, and what we're talking about is allowing the communities, allowing the First Nations to make a lot of their own decisions. I sat on council on my First Nation and understand the restrictive language on some of the things that we want to accomplish. So here's a government that's, we're proposing a common sense approach to that. A First Nation charge so they can be in control of their resources and the money that they get. If history has taught us anything, a government that comes and tells you what to do never works.
In New Brunswick, early in the campaign, Poelzer announced his party would create a pre-approved national energy corridor for pipelines, rail lines, and others to move resources, acknowledging the need to consult with Indigenous people in the process.
First, we would use the model of the shovel-ready zone. That is to say, the permits would be pre-authorized. After consultations and environmental research, we would find the path that is safe for our citizens and for nature. Second, we would consult with First Nations, as is our duty under the Constitution of Canada.
Developing the economy of northern Saskatchewan and sharing resource revenues with remote and Indigenous communities is an important issue here. Conservative leader Pierre Poelzer says he will give financial incentives to Indigenous communities if they lend their support to resource projects. But he has also said that he wants to fast-track permits and repeal Bill C-69, a law that protects Indigenous rights and environmental assessment in the approval process.
This riding is the world's second largest uranium producer. Liberal leader Mark Carney is also looking to streamline approval for resource projects, and he too was explicit that First Nations, Métis, and Inuit will remain central to any new national resource or infrastructure projects.
An energy superpower in clean energy and nuclear energy, built on the ingenuity in Saskatchewan. An energy superpower that harvests our critical metals and minerals in full partnership with Indigenous peoples.
Our water is ours. Our land is ours. This country is ours. And the First Nations and the Métis people and the people of the North, they know that those must be protected from any force that wants to meddle with our inherent rights and our lands.
Belanger says while economic reconciliation is essential, top of mind here, he says, are tariff and sovereignty, and he believes his leader's popularity is what will help him secure this riding for the Liberals.
I think it's all due to our Prime Minister Carney. I think there's a huge level of confidence in his ability as our Prime Minister to be able to navigate the storm that we recently have encountered in a man named Donald Trump trying to make Canada the 51st state. I think that's absolutely silly, but we also have to look at Mr. Trump's aspirations for Canada as a real threat.
Opposition to Donald Trump has been a central pillar of the Liberal Party's campaign, but the NDP candidate here, Doug Racine, disagrees that it matters much to voters in the North.
When you knock on doors in the North, Donald Trump is never mentioned. So many of these people are living are living below the poverty line. They're more worried about whether or not their son and daughter are going to come home that night because maybe they're addicted on drugs. They're worried about the price of food, which is just astronomical in the North. They're worried about how they're going to make it to their medical appointment. I mean, that Donald Trump doesn't enter into a lot of the conversations up here.
Métis candidate Doug Racine says he is trying to knock on as many doors as he can for the NDP, but the vast size of the riding and the short length of the campaign make it challenging for him to reach everyone. Racine is a military veteran and Saskatoon lawyer who ran provincially unsuccessfully for the NDP in 2024. He believes that the most pressing issue for the northern population is housing, with overcrowding and dangerous construction realities in this part of the province especially on reserve.
There's no houses in Lemaigre. There's no housing. And not only that, even if you do get here, if you have a family, the child care spaces are, it's a 6-month to a year waiting list. So there's a real crisis being developed there. So that's one thing, right? That's just one example. If you go out into the villages and into the First Nations communities, housing's a big issue there.
We can do this. There are solutions about housing. I really believe in a housing first approach. If you can get someone in a home, we can figure everything else out.
In Saskatchewan's north, however, maintaining housing stock has been a challenge.
And I'm just going to give you one example, but there's lots of examples across north. Sandy Bay. A lot of the houses that were under repair or that could be repaired are now burnt down because of the drug crisis. Because of the drug and addiction crisis, many people are being forced out of their homes. They become homeless and they have no place to live. They go into these abandoned houses, they light a fire to stay warm, and it burns.
The mayor of Laronge, Joe Hordisky, shares the concerns on housing and believes it is the most pressing issue in this election. A long-term care facility is being built in the community.
Well, this is a challenging area. We have a lot of, the ground is either too hard or it's too soft. And when you've got areas where you've got 4 or 5 feet of muskeg and you gotta take it out, and you know, it's challenging to put the pipes in the ground, and the amount of fill required to get them to shovel ready is quite cost effective. And so when you try and attract developers, you know, they look at the total cost and they said, you know, it doesn't make sense for them economically to, you know, to put up a bunch of rentals when their upfront costs are a little higher.
Hordisky adds that even when the healthcare facility is completed, the town will be challenged to recruit medical professionals. First, there's nowhere for them to live, and second, he says, crime in this small community has taken a toll.
We have issues with being a little soft on the sentencing and kind of a revolving door. And we had a lady that was murdered in Orange by somebody that had a list of offenses that were as long as my arm and should have not been out, and that would have never happened. And those are the kinds of things we're afraid of, that they for some reason they allow them to be out until their court date or whatever. And when somebody's got, you know, offenses that makes them dangerous to society, you know, there needs to be some swifter penalties put in.
The mayor wouldn't say how he'll vote in the federal election, but the Conservative candidate and former RCMP officer Lemaigre believes his party's tough on crime stance resonates with voters here.
When you have people committing crime and we put them through the system, it was frustrating because once they entered the system, they're back on the streets. And I heard that many times locally. Why is it? You know, when you're talking to a victim, this happened to me, this is my reality, and why are they back into the system, back onto the street, making me more vulnerable in case it happens again? These are real fears that people are living. And when you think about northern Saskatchewan, if you look at the resources that's made available to them, in some of our communities, we're short RCMP members. And so how do we meet the safety of the community? And when you talk about 3 strikes, you're out. And those are some of the things that communities have been asking for a long time, if you listen to them. They've been saying, like, why is it this is the system?
While voters here may be swayed by one issue or another, journalist Doug Cuthan says that in Desnethé-Missinippi-Churchill River, at the end of the day, all politics are local.
In the north, you also have the demographics. Lemaigre is a Dene, so he comes to the north. We call it the top, you know, the top of the province, Lake Athabasca, and across there to La Loche. He's from La Loche, so he'll probably carry a lot of the Dene vote because he's known by those people. But on the south side, Belanger will cover the Métis vote for sure. I know he'll probably take the Woodland Cree vote as well. So it's just a matter of demographics.
Regardless of the ballot box issue, the challenge is getting voters to the polls. Turnout is low in this part of the country. In 2021, less than half of the eligible voters, 45%, showed up. With such a small population, every vote counts, and this is why candidates are going to the most remote fly-in communities. Next, we look at the riding of Saskatoon-University, a riding that's been held by the Conservative for more than 20 years. Liberals usually end up in third place, but this time they're eyeing this particular area for a take.
We do have the plan to move this country forward, protect our country, build a new relations with Europe and elsewhere. We have the plan to get our resources to market from this province. We have the plan in terms of affordability, the $500,000 a year. We have the plan to build reconciliation in this country and uplift everybody in this country. But you, each and every one of you, are that agent of change and that positivity. So embrace it, go fight for Canada, and let's get this done. All right.
Liberal candidate Greg Poelzer is motivating the dozen volunteers who have come to canvass the Saskatoon-University riding, where he is trying to upset the long-standing hold by the Conservatives. Poelzer teaches political science at the institution which gives its name to this area, the University of Saskatchewan. For him, this election is historically significant, and it's the reason he is running.
It's basically a referendum election where the nation is on the ballot. And people are concerned, are we going to go down kind of a Trump-style Canada in a 51st state type model of Canada? Or are we going to be a country that coheres and upholds our Canadian values? What I hear on the doorstep time and time again from traditional NDP voters, we'll go up the door and knock and they'll already say, you've already got our vote. Even doors I knock on that have NDP signs on will say, we have to support you.
A win by the Liberals would be a massive shift from previous elections. Since the riding's creation in 2012, the Grits have always finished third behind the Conservatives and the New Democrats, and no Liberal has held a seat in Saskatoon since 1993. Trying to change this, leader Mark Carney came to the city to talk about tariffs, healthcare, and housing.
Build millions more homes. Not a few. Millions more homes. We are going to double the rate of home building in this country so that all the young people here can actually afford a home. That would be nice for us.
But Poelzer's enthusiasm for the possibility of a Liberal win is also fueled by local poll numbers midway through the campaign that suggest the Liberal Party might be competitive in this Conservative stronghold. Saskatchewan has been labelled the Blue Wall. Voters here have only elected Conservatives in the province's 14 ridings for the past two federal elections. The last Liberal in Saskatchewan was longtime MP and Cabinet Minister Raph Goodale, who lost his Regina-Wascana seat in 2019. Still, Poelzer has high hopes for a win here.
It's kind of exciting for a change.
Well, we can actually win this riding.
Well, it looks, and this riding has been Liberal before.
Yeah.
So it may be.
But Daniel Westlake, a political science professor at the University of Saskatchewan, isn't sure if the momentum will materialize at the ballot box.
If the NDP vote in the riding completely collapses, the Liberals have a chance. And if they were able to pull a lot of that vote, that's hard to know if it's going to happen. Some polls are suggesting it might, but we haven't seen the Liberal Party get competitive in a riding like Saskatoon-University essentially since it was created. So we don't know how consolidated the progressive vote's going to be in Saskatoon, and it's hard to know where the Liberals are in Saskatoon in that kind of event. So there's a lot of unknowns, which I think makes it possible that the Liberals win. But like I say, everything has to go right for them. If you're choosing who to put money on, the Conservatives are probably the party still in the riding that are the favorite.
The incumbent here is two-term Conservative MP and former provincial speaker Cory Tochor, the Conservative Party's associate natural resource critic. Tochor has a reputation as a staunch fiscal and social conservative. He voted in favor of criminalizing abortion related to gender selection and is one of 63 MPs who voted against the legal amendment making conversion therapy criminal. As the incumbent in the CPC stronghold, the riding is Tochor's to lose. We requested an interview with Cory Tochor, but his team said he was too busy.
Located on Treaty 6 territory, Saskatoon-University is one of 3 mostly urban ridings in the city. It houses the university and the Royal University Hospital. The housing here is mixed with high-end homes perched above the South Saskatchewan River, student residences, and some of the city suburbs. During the 2024 provincial election, voters in most of this riding elected NDP MLAs, but our pundit tells us that NDP support provincially has not traditionally translated into support for the New Democrats federally.
Two things you want to be thinking about going from provincial to federal politics. Some of that orange vote in the last election was an anti-incumbent vote. So it's people who are concerned about the cost of living, it's people who are concerned about the way that healthcare is being provided. That runs against the Sask Party in provincial election. It doesn't run in favor of the NDP or the Liberals in a federal election. It's the Liberal Party that's the incumbent, and so that anti-incumbent vote's going to go against the Liberals. And then the NDP in Saskatchewan can tailor their appeal to Saskatchewan. They don't have to worry about pipeline politics. They can be a little bit more careful on environmental issues in a way that matches kind of the interest of voters who might be reasonably progressive but are concerned that they're not British Columbia New Democrats, right?
We're going to fight back. If you are worried about the deep cuts of Pierre Poilievre and you want to reject the Conservatives, and you're also worried that Mark Carney is proposing to cut the things that you care about, vote for a New Democrat. My commitment to you is New Democrats will never support a budget that cuts the things that you need. We will never support a budget that cuts healthcare, which is such a Canadian value, the one that we hold so dear. We will never allow that to happen. We will always fight back.
The apparent lack of momentum for the NDP this time didn't stop leader Jagmeet Singh from prioritizing a visit to Saskatoon during the campaign's 3rd week. He focused on healthcare and put the spotlight on the Saskatoon-University candidate.
As an RN working here in Saskatoon, I've seen firsthand what happens when healthcare is underfunded. Every day at work, we face staffing shortages, we see packed emergency rooms, we have long wait times. Patients, families, seniors, and kids, they're the ones who pay the price.
The NDP's Melissa McGillivray says she wants to ensure that homelessness, health, and the importance of a strong social safety net are top ballot issues in this election. She says a lot of these things are taking a back burner to talk of tariffs and Donald Trump.
And I've been involved in political campaigns for years. I've been a canvasser for many, many years. This is a very unusual situation we find ourselves in. People are very focused on one issue. But then when you start talking to them, they bring out the other issues that are of concern for them. So because I'm a registered nurse, a lot of folks talk about healthcare being a priority. A lot of folks talk about, homelessness. That seems to be an ever-increasing issue in cities across Canada. And so I just tie it into the fact that the NDP is in it for you. They're here to try and support people.
The Newtown neighborhood is just across the river from the city's downtown. The most urban part of the riding, voters here have traditionally favored the NDP. The neighborhood is where the NDP's campaign office is, surrounded by cafes, restaurants, bars, and shops, and also with orange signs. The challenge for this candidate is to convince voters in the suburban area of the riding to support her party.
I mean, there's some issues of shared concern, right? Like affordability is an issue everywhere, healthcare is an issue everywhere. People have lots of concerns about municipal issues that they bring up. But this tends to be an NDP stronghold, whereas this tends to be more conservative historically. That being said, when we're out in these areas and they hear that I'm a registered nurse with lived experience, we are getting unexpected support.
Asked about local polls showing that her party is trailing in Saskatoon-University and across the country, Melissa McGillivray says the numbers do not show a complete picture.
How much is the name of Jagmeet Singh helping or hindering, or how much does it come to the people who you meet door knocking?
I think it's a mixed bag, But it's been interesting as well, because last week we were very fortunate to spend some time with Jagmeet at a rally, and then we attended the Gurdwara, and then we were part of a healthcare announcement that happened. And so the big question on the doorstep this week has been, is he as kind in person as he appears to be on TV? And I've been able to reinforce with people that he really genuinely is doing this with a good heart, because he wants the best for people.
Although Saskatoon-University is considered an urban riding, it is in the heart of this prairie province's agricultural and natural resources sectors, the two main drivers of Saskatchewan's economy. Many major actors of these industries have their headquarters or offices in Saskatoon. While some parts of these sectors haven't been directly hit by U.S. tariffs yet, at least one industry, canola, is facing a major threat.
The two largest markets for canola and canola products are the United States and China, and those are two markets which are currently in turmoil.
Canola oil and meal were hit by China with a 100% tariff in March in retaliation to duties imposed by Canada on Chinese electric vehicles, steel, and aluminum.
China is a $5 billion canola market. So you can't just say, oh, well, we'll just take a right-hand turn. There really needs to be some solutions to the problems that farmers are facing.
Leftwich says tariffs and threats to free trade between Canada and the United States have been the central theme of this campaign. But China tariffs and the massive canola industry here have been left out.
In the last few weeks in this electoral campaign, federally, there's been a lot of talk about tariffs. We've talked about U.S. lumber, aluminum, but do you feel forgotten in all this discussion with that tariff coming from China, which has been present and doesn't seem to be getting headlines discussed, especially by the leaders and the parties?
Absolutely. Yeah, canola is a $43 billion business, so it's massive. When you think of it compared to other crops and other industries, $43 billion to the Canadian economy. And so what happens, though, is that we don't necessarily get the same kind of concerns about what's happening with farmers as you might in other places. We're not in a position to tell the federal government what to do to solve the problem, but we want some interest in solving the problem.
One reason the Conservatives have done well in Saskatchewan, says our pundit, is they position themselves as defenders of a province that often feels far removed from what happens in Ottawa. An Angus Reid poll conducted just prior to the writ period found that 1 in 3 people in Saskatchewan would vote to leave Canada if the Liberals were elected, either to form a sovereign country or to join the United States.
When I think about Western alienation, I think about a frustration with the federal government, a desire for more Western representation in the federal government, and a desire for policies that reflect the interests of the West. Opposition to carbon taxes, support for building pipelines, support for large levels of resource development. To me, that's different from Western separation, the idea that the West should leave the country. For me, for a separatist movement to take hold, you need a strong running sense of identity that is seen as mutually exclusive to the identity in the rest of the country. And I just don't see that in Saskatchewan.
Westlake thinks that this sentiment of exclusion may be enough for the Conservative incumbent here to hold his seat, regardless of what the polls say. But Liberal Greg Poelzer believes his party and his leader are well poised to break the blue wall in Saskatoon.
What I often say with our friends from the NDP, because on a lot of values there's 90% overlap, is if we can borrow their vote this election, because the stakes are so high.
For CPAC in Saskatoon, this is Rémi Authier.